Hello everybody. In today's video, I'm super excited to talk about Hacktoberfest. And if you don't know what Hacktoberfest is, let me just bring it up for you and show you. It is a once-a-year event, happens every October, and it's meant to encourage you to contribute to open source projects. And if you're new to coding, or maybe if you're not new to coding, you might be like, what does any of that even mean? And I'm not a coding expert. What does this have to do with me? I'm here to tell you that anybody can participate in this. And I mean anybody. This was one of the first things I started doing when I was learning to code. And I was able to contribute before I even really knew anything useful to do with code. And so if you are like, hey, I want to get more involved with coding with other people, but I don't know really how to do much yet, this is for you. Keep watching. I'm going to back up 2 steps and talk about open source code contributions. And you may have heard that term before. We use it a lot in the developer space. And what it basically means is someone has code, they have a project, and they want other people to help contribute to it. Could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because they offer some sort of free product and having people contribute to it continues to make it better and adds more features. Could be because other people have a lot of ideas for features with this and their dev teams just don't have time to implement it, so other people can implement those as well. Lots of reasons you might do it. But how does it work, and what is GitHub, and what does it really mean, and what does that have to do with anything? So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. And basically, GitHub, you can kind of think of open source contribution as like having a big Word doc, okay? So let's say, let's talk about Google Docs. Let's say I want to write an article about why cats are amazing. And I've written one, and I'm like, they're really cool. And I have 2 cats. One is named Melman, can't spell, and one is named Blackjack. And so let's say I've got that there, and I'm like, okay, this is a pretty cool article. And so I push it out, and other people see this, and they're like, oh, that's great. But it could be better, right? Like, there's more we could talk about why cats are amazing, but I'm only one person, and I can only do so much. So what GitHub, and there's other tools, but GitHub's kind of the primary one, lets me do is kind of push this code out, and GitHub is the Google Doc formatter kind of thing in this analogy. So I'm like, hey, let me put this out here and, share access with, other people can come in and edit. And someone might look at this article and say, ooh, it'd be really cool if you added pictures of your cats to this. And that's where I'm like, ooh, yeah, that's a good idea. And they're like, yeah, so let's go ahead and actually add, I should have had some of Melman ahead of time in here, but let's just go insert image, search the web. We're just going to search over here for cat. So yeah, we'll grab one in there too. Go ahead and insert it. And they're like, oh, cool. So already looking better. Interesting cat with 2 different colors eyes. Okay, and so then let's say someone else is like, ooh, I actually, what about making like a pros and cons sort of thing, or like make a listicle of like, here's 5 good things that I really like about cats. And they're like, I can contribute to the article. And it's like, great. So then they come into this Google Doc and they say 5 things I really like about cats. And they're like, I don't have to take them outside. Sometimes they snuggle me. Let's see. What else? What is there not to like about cats? They're really cute. They purr, and it's adorable, and also they're gentle. Sure. So, anyway, so they have all of they have these things there, and then someone else comes in and they're like, ooh, what if you added like a pros and cons, like cats versus dogs kind of thing? And so they're like, I can add a table in there. And so let's say, they add in a table where it's like pros and cons, and it's like, whatever. You get the idea. So this is how, a Google Doc eventually, like, it started with just this, but then other people came in and contributed with it, and they added these things in, and it was awesome. And if you've ever used Google Docs before, you know that when people do that, Google has a pretty good way of being able to revert back to previous versions. Like, it's not like somebody can come in and completely mess it up. And that's a really cool way to go about it so that multiple people can contribute. And GitHub works kind of the same way with open source projects as well. So GitHub is kind of like your home, that it's your Google Doc that kind of holds all of the information, and it gives other people a way to what's called fork, which is basically copy that repo into their area, change whatever they want with it, whether it's like, in our analogy, adding, cat pictures, or, adding code changes in here, whatever you want to do. And then you create what's called a pull request where you say, hey, here's the changes I made to that document or that code. Would you like to bring that into your repo? Or bring repo is another term for this whole area where we have our code listed. And you say, yeah, that looks good to me. And then it merges it in and it makes sure it doesn't break anything you've done, anything they've done, and it just makes it all fit together really nicely, just like it would if you're editing a Google Doc together. And so what that is, open source contribution, is participating in that. It's looking for Google Docs or GitHub repos that actually need, some help with different things and are looking for new features. And the way you see that is you go and find a repo and you look in different issues and you see, oh, these are all the different things that they want done. So that's what that is. And then you make those changes and contribute it. And you're probably like, wait a minute, but what you just said, I don't have to code. It sounds like I'm contributing to code. And yes, you technically are, but not all changes are code changes. And what I mean by that is sometimes there's a lot of words and a lot of documentation about how to use an app. And that is one way that you can contribute. Sometimes you can look through all of this text right here as part of the repo, and it's a file that you can edit. And so sometimes contributing is simply looking through here and saying, oh, hey, I noticed a typo on here. Let's fix that typo. Or it's like, hey, I noticed you didn't explain how to do XYZ. Like, let's write out, an article about, or let's add a document for how to do XYZ. Or this part wasn't explained very well. Let's add a section in here. And you can see, so I've actually created this repo. It's an EUI event template, and it's a React app with the EUI design library on it. And I'll actually just show you what it looks like. But it's basically a simple app for hosting an event. And so you've got like your speaker panel that shows the different speakers you have. You've got talks that show, the different talks that are coming up and things like that. So that's what this is. And this repo is what's holding all of the code for that and the different to-dos that we need with it. And so I have some things in there that are very simple and don't really require code, like updating documents or adding issue templates. So just when someone goes in here to create a new to-do, making a template for making sure they go through XYZ. And so I'm trying to add more beginner-friendly things in there because I want people who aren't, they don't necessarily feel like they're code experts. I want them to be able to help. But if you are comfortable with coding, even if you're like, I only know a little bit, you can still participate. I've made plenty of simpler sort of issues in here that's, there's varying ones. There's ones that are more complicated than others, but there's some where it's just applying CSS styles to make something hover or, adding icons to a footer that link to something. So there's all sorts of levels can be accommodated here. And so I'm going to stop and I want to make another video where I'm going to talk about the actual act of okay, I'm interested. How do I actually do this? I'm going to go into that in a next video, but Hacktoberfest is an event where basically if you make 4 of those contributions, you can get a t-shirt. It's a whole month-long activity where you can meet up with other folks who are doing the same sort of thing. There's a Discord server and all sorts of things you can do there. So I've had a lot of fun with it. It's the thing that helped me back in 2019 when I was first starting to learn to code, feel more comfortable with how does GitHub work? What's a pull request? If you're sitting there wondering any of those things, this is by far the best way to get involved and get comfortable with that. And if you want to learn to code, chances are you'll eventually be working with a developer team and you'll be using tools like this. So this is a great way to get comfortable with it and understand version control and just contributing to others' code. So I'm going to include a few links in the description to help you if you want to get into it, including my repo where I'm going to be posting some beginner-friendly issues. And I'd love to help you with them. If you're like, I've never done a pull request before, that's totally fine. I'm going to create some content around how you can do that. And I'm also willing to, help anybody. And you can DM me and connect with me, and I'm happy to kind of walk you through that process. So follow and check all this stuff out. I've actually even got a Slack community where if you want to come join, there's other folks who are learning how to code and, maybe not as far along as a lot of the people you see in Reddit and some of these other channels are with their coding journey. So feel free to come build with us. We're a very gentle, happy, helpful community. And would love to have you participate this year.